Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank one of my subscribers, JG, for this article that comes out of Detroit, WSAZ3. Um, all right, so WSAZ investigate our new Detroit. Parts of our region has become a drug destination for dealers. Investigators like WSAZ, there is a new city feeding deadly drugs to our communities, rivaling, and it's impacting our Detroit and Columbus, Ohio, which has plagued Charleston and Huntington communities for years. Ohio has been struggling for some time and probably one of the most hardest hit states, that along with West Virginia in this drug plague. And WSAZ exclusive, Jatera McGee investigates the latest pipeline city for drugs. WSAZ has told you about the Detroit drug connection for years. Investigators say Detroit connection is still strong and the dealers are very established in West Virginia. But there's now a different source city, Akron, Ohio, linked to murder investigation, drug arrests, and a variety of court records in West Virginia. Akron is now on the radar of police in both Charleston and Huntington. A concerned Huntington investigator are especially concerned about. Huntington Police Chief Hank Dial says Akron is now the source city of Huntington's fentanyl and carfentanil supply. Both fentanyl and carfentanil are drugs so dangerous you can die just from touching them. The chief says they first noticed the intent of dealers coming from Akron 3 years ago and say it is now becoming a bigger threat. The Detroit dealers are a little more established and appear to be less violent at this time. Akron folks bring fentanyl and carfentanil, which is extremely dangerous, and they seem to be a more dangerous, younger group than the dealers from Detroit, Dial said. WSAZ drove nearly 250 miles to Akron and asked Akron police to show us where the suspected dealers live. They took us to suburban areas filled with promise, a much different scene from what we saw in our 2 trips to Detroit. They were able to take the drugs here and take them down to West Virginia and probably sell them at a profit, said Lieutenant David Garrow, who is in the head of the narcotics division of the Akron Police Department. Garrow is also a 25-year veteran in the department. I don't think Akron is any different than any other city across the United States, from the biggest ones in Los Angeles, Houston, to the smaller ones. Okay, so West Virginia. Now, West Virginia, the drug problem probably been one of the biggest ones in the country. I think the most frustrating part is it never going to go away. It's a supply and demand driven thing. Absolutely. That is the perfect statement to say. Garrow says his department has been forced to adapt to constantly changing drug climate. He says his department does not deal with criminals from West Virginia often at all, but remembered specific instances where investigators from Huntington and Charleston reached out to Akron police for intel or on suspected dealers from Akron. One of those cases was in August 2016 when an unprecedented 28 overdoses within a 5-hour span propelled the city of Huntington drug crisis into national headlines. 2 people died, while the other 26 were revived with Narcan. Emergency sources in the city were stretched near their breaking point. The man who admitted to supplying the drugs, Bruce Griggs, is from Akron. He was sentenced to in 2017 in federal courts of 220 months in prison with 3 years of supervised release. Actually, that's not really a long prison term when you look at it in the way they were given out to crack addicts. He's still making out with a much shorter sentences than them. Um, they are just watching and investigating these particular cities where it's a lot of drug trafficking happening. And they're finding that the suburban areas, which I'm not surprised, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in the suburbs. And I can tell you in these suburban areas, drug activity is high. They always try to make it seem like it's in those urban areas where it's off the charts. It's off the charts in the suburbs as well. Definitely. In fact, just the local news where you see a lot of the drug bust, that's where they are around here in New Jersey. They're not in some of the areas that you think it would be in. It's a lot in the suburbs. Days after we traveled to Akron, WSAZ sat in on the suspect's preliminary hearings. A clerk error on the search warrant, confusing apartments A and B on the paperwork provided the defense a loophole and led the magistrate to dismiss all the charges, felony possession with intent charges. These were reverse B was on the left and A was on the right, an attorney said during the hearing. Out of the handcuffs, the suspects and their families celebrate their win. Okay, so they got to walk out of the court. This drug dealer got to walk out the court because of a clerical error by the court clerk. Oh, well, nothing new in America. But, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of drugs are coming out of Canada as well. And I noticed they don't do very many stories on a lot of the drugs that's trafficked from Canada into the US. You hear more about Mexico into the US and even China into the US than you do with Canada. But Canada is another hotspot for a lot of drugs coming into the US. So I'm not surprised, being that Detroit is closest to Canada, that so much drug activity is going on up there. But please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.